When I say the words modern romance, what comes to mind? Maybe it's something like this: two star-crossed lovers in a time that don't understand their relationship. Or maybe it's something more like this: two lovers who ultimately have a bitter quarrel because some secrets are revealed, and it's a compromise of the two that creates a relationship.
I'm being an arrogant son of a bitch, and I tell you when you're being a pain in the ass.
What if I said it's neither of these, though, but instead is set in a 1950s London, following a consumed and controlling dressmaker, played by Daniel Day-Lewis? Well, if you guessed Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread, then you'd be correct. However, I'm not just going to talk about the story here, or the fact that the dresses are one of the most spectacle, eye-gazing, jaw-dropping-esque pieces of any film that I've seen in a long time, well deserved of the Oscar. But instead, I'm going to focus on a part that I think is completely and utterly overshadowed: the lighting and the cinematography that Anderson specifically puts a lot of focus in, especially for a film like this. Over the course of the film, we're following characters who have an array of motions, and you have to make sure that you understand them, and Anderson does this with a lot of enunciation. Now, I don't want to say that the elegance of the film through dress and through set design are completely overshadowed. In fact, I think that they shadow everything else. However, I think it's the addition of lighting and this whole formula that Anderson does which makes the film so interesting. I'm going to focus on two main aspects that Anderson uses for his lighting and cinematography. The first being natural lighting, and the second being chiaroscuro.
What a model of politeness you two are.
So, I'm going to start on chiaroscuro. This ultimately means a lot of shadows and one light projecting on one half of the face to add a lot of emotion and drama.
I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just waiting around like an idiot for you.
And it is in these intense moments of emotion that we understand why Anderson uses it. That being for intense moments of vulnerability. Characters don't want to explicitly state why they act the way they do, but the lighting gives us enough. And when those emotional climaxes finally appear with explicit meaning, it hits harder.
Right. If I don't protect myself, somebody will come in the middle of the night and take over my corner of the room.
It adds so much more effect to the points when they're isolated. When characters are alone, we find a lot more relatability, as it's an emotion that everyone has felt. And the shadow is used as a means to express our mortality. The fact that if we truly stay alone, the only thing that's with us is our shadow. And that's what makes us ultimately human. That's why Anderson uses so much of the shadow work throughout the film, and ultimately why they're so jaunting. This darkness adds so much more effect to the overall meaning of isolation and true meaning of equal in a relationship. At the same time, it also adds so much more effect to the contrast, that being its use of natural lighting. And the film uses this primarily as one main aspect and with one main character, that being Cyril. Cyril is the embodiment of the Woodcock household as a business and as a brand. She is entirely encapsulating with the natural light. And in that same way, Anderson wants natural light to reflect it. Thus, he uses natural light only in settings as a means of a facade. Every character who actively looks and acts in natural light is only because that's who they are. They're putting on an act to the rest of the world. And it is ultimately this act that can cause so much distress. Like here, for instance, Reynolds is sitting at a nice little diner that he had come out to the country for as a means of relaxation. But the first thing that he notices is Alma, walking out with this natural warm light. What this means is that Reynolds already has put on the facade after breaking up with his previous girlfriend for sake of already looking towards a new lover. Then the transition moves almost as if to shine that Reynolds is putting on the mask because he knows that he has to. That's why the subtle shift in tone from his facial expressions are so impressive while also being explicit in what he feels. One of the better examples as well is with Cyril again. She ultimately embodies this Woodcock household and Woodcock progression, and it's for that exact reason why she will do anything at all costs to protect the name. As she and Reynolds bicker about what truly they should do with Alma, it's this last meeting where Cyril truly shows her teeth and her dominance, as she's the one who runs the household, even though Reynolds might seem as the face.
Don't pick a fight with me. You certainly won't come out alive.
And it's in these quick transitions that we see that the family is not as close as they first seemed, even though it seems to be one of the more prim and proper English dynasties. It's not. It's always an act with Anderson, and the bright light only acts as stage lights. One of my favorite scenes is this one right here. I'm going to slow it down as we can ascend up the staircase of the Woodcock Manor. What do we see? We see this elegance, but underneath all of the stairs and all of the shadow, we see mold and rust. And this old mold and rust reflect the fake nature that Woodcock household tries to present. They try to act as if they are these great dressmakers, which they are, but only at face value. And every single point that there is bright light, there's always a level of professionalism with it. Never is there a point where characters actively are happy in the bright light. It's only because they have to be. Customers are always watching, and that's the same reason. There's never a point where the characters actively feel themselves utterly enthralled and consumed with their work. It's always as a means to express one meaning to the customer. And ultimately, when this confrontation between Cyril and Reynolds again happens concerning Alma's appearance and change of customers, it adds so much more effect now that there's this level of blended chiaroscuro, almost passive in a way, on Reynolds' face, reflecting this same kind of ideal that he has emotions and that he is a person. And it makes it so much more interesting as him and Cyril bicker, as this bright light shines behind her, as she kind of emulates the embodiment of what a figurehead ought to be, in comparison to Daniel Day-Lewis, who stands in the back with the shadows watching over him, and as one side of his face is completely clouded.
It concerns me very much, Cyril, because it's hurt my feelings.
Reynolds has just put his emotions into the pit, and the camera comes back to Cyril, showing a little bit of shadow, almost as if she's reflecting and connecting with her brother. But then this bright light again controls her and shows that she is only here as a professional. But ultimately, the audience knows she has no true emotion and cannot reflect or see herself in her brother.
But I don't want to hear it because it hurts my ears.
And in response, Reynolds cannot sit there but understand what is happening. He doesn't even have his own family on his side because his own family does not reflect that same emotion he feels. In conclusion, I think Anderson means to say that in relationships, even though they can seem to be as complicated as possible, it's only just black and white. As we follow the lives of the Woodcock family and ultimately grow to connect and relate to them, it's that same emotion that we see and desire in our own partners and in a relationship. Be there when ultimately we will fall, and at the same time always be willing to care for us and sway us back into a point where we can see each other eye to eye. And it's the vulnerable points as well as in our bright moments where ultimately Anderson, I think, wants to create this beauty of complete and utter equal in a relationship. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.